The fluorescent lights in the maternity ward hummed with sterile indifference, the kind of sound no one notices until everything else falls silent. Room 347 had been joy just minutes earlier. A mother's exhausted laughter, a father's trembling hands cradling his newborn daughter, the fragile chorus of life beginning. Nurses lingered near the doorway, quietly smiling. Then the monitor changed. The steady rhythm fractured, faster, slower, and then flat. That singular tone, sharp as glass, sliced through the hall. The baby's color shifted before their eyes, pink to pale to the sickly blue of breath lost. The mother's scream echoed, raw enough to rattle window panes. The father clutched the tiny cap he'd pulled from the bassinet, fingers white-knuckled, frozen in disbelief. Two nurses rushed in, fumbling with equipment they had practiced 1,000 times but never wanted to use on something so impossibly small. One dropped a suction tube. It clattered on the tile, loud enough to make the father flinch. The second stretched cruelly, each one a reminder that no one was in control. And then he walked in. Nurse Daniel Rivera. The room didn't breathe easier when he arrived. It tensed. Respect followed him, yes, but warmth never did. He was the nurse who never smiled, who finished his shifts without a word, who carried competence like armor and compassion like dead weight. Not him, one of the younger nurses whispered, too softly for the parents to hear. He didn't look up, didn't offer comfort. He simply stepped forward, lifted the infant as though she were made of glass, and placed her against his steady palm. His face was unreadable, his eyes locked in focus. They thought he felt nothing. They were about to learn how wrong they were. When every second counts and one choice can change a life, what would you do? And subscribe to witness more heart-stopping moments like this. 6 hours earlier, Daniel Rivera clocked in the way he always did, without a word. No small talk, no greeting, just a quiet swipe of his badge and the steady rhythm of his shoes on polished tile. At the nurse's station, three colleagues shared coffee and weekend stories. Laughter spilled across the desk. One nurse called out, "Morning, Daniel." He gave a curt nod, eyes already moving past the chatter. When he turned the corner, one of them muttered, "Cold as a corpse, that one." They thought he couldn't hear. He always did. Daniel had worked in the maternity ward for 6 years. 200 births, countless complications, a spotless record. His skill was never questioned. His warmth, always. Patients preferred the others, the one who joked, who cooed over newborns. Daniel brought precision, not comfort. Fathers requested reassignment. Mothers whispered their disappointment. He never explained himself. In the locker room, his routine was the same as always. Stethoscope, pen light, badge. But then came the pause. From the top shelf, he retrieved a worn photograph, its edges soft from handling. His expression shifted. Pain, memory, something in between, before he slid it into his pocket and shut the locker door. The day unfolded in a predictable rhythm. Vitals logged, medications charted, a C-section scheduled for later. The kind of order hospitals are built on. Room 347 was waiting. The Johnsons, first-time parents. Cora had been in labor for 11 hours. Marcus hovered nervously, his hands restless on the chair arms. Daniel checked in twice. His voice stayed even, professional. "Everything looks good," he said. Not, "You're doing great," not, "Almost there." just facts. Cora and Marcus exchanged a look that said everything they didn't have the strength to say aloud. By evening, the contractions peaked. Daniel assisted quietly, passing instruments to the physician, monitoring Cora's vitals, and readying the warming station. The room tightened with anticipation. At 9:47 p.m., the baby arrived, a boy, lungs strong, cries piercing through exhaustion and fear. Marcus broke into tears. Cora laughed, relief flooding her face. The doctor grinned, offering a joke about the newborn's lungs. For a breath, the ward felt whole. Daniel noted the Apgar score, wrapped the child, and prepared to hand him to his mother. Routine, ordinary, until the monitor changed its tune. The sound hit first, not the soft, steady beeping that had filled the room moments ago, but the shrill alarm that slices through the air like a shrapnel, designed to jolt bodies into action, to drag minds into battle. High-pitched, relentless, impossible to ignore. It wasn't a drill. It wasn't simulation. The infant in Daniel's hands went limp. 1 second, tiny fists had been clenching, legs twitching with instinctive newborn strength. The next, stillness. The child's weight shifted, becoming impossibly heavy in the way only lifelessness can. A newborn should never feel heavy. This one did. Daniel didn't think. Training carried him. He moved to the warming table, laying the infant down with precision that looked calm but was fueled by a surge of dread in his veins. He tilted his small head back to open the airway, fingers gentle, exact. His breath controlled even as chaos detonated behind him. Cora's scream tore out of her throat raw, primal. "What's happening? What's wrong with my baby?" Her arms thrashed as nurses tried to hold her down, keeping her from leaping off the delivery table. Marcus surged forward, his voice breaking. "Do something! Why aren't you doing something?" His hands reached for his son, but another nurse caught him, pulling him back before he could collide with the equipment. 2 nurses flanked Daniel, but their composure cracked. Michelle, a veteran with 15 years in maternity, froze, her eyes locked on the blue shade spreading across the baby's lips. She'd seen respiratory failure before, but knowing it happened and watching it unfold in front of new parents were 2 different worlds. Her hands hovered, trembling. "Get the neonatal bag!" Daniel's voice cut through the panic, sharp, absolute. Michelle snapped out of her daze, fumbling for the bag, equipment clattering onto the floor. Precious seconds dissolved. Daniel didn't stop. He placed 2 fingers on the infant's sternum and began compressions. 30 pumps, precise rhythms, pressing down just half an inch each time. A machine could not have moved perfectly. His voice stayed level. "Confirm the code card is ready." The room didn't match him. Cora sobbed until her voice broke. Marcus's prayers dissolved into wordless roars. One nurse whispered, maybe without meaning to, "Why him? He doesn't even care." The words landed. Daniel's face betrayed nothing. His hands didn't falter. 2 breaths delivered gently into the infant's lungs. No chest rise. Back to compressions. But inside, he was unraveling. His heart hammered against ribs that felt like they might splinter. Because he'd been here before. Not in this ward, not with this child, but in another hospital 6 years ago. He was holding another newborn, his daughter Elena. He could see her face even now, the blue tinge spreading across skin too fragile for this world. He could hear the silence where there should have been crying. He could feel the helplessness of standing at the wrong side of the bed, watching strangers in scrubs do everything right and still lose. The photograph in his pocket burned against his chest with every compression, the worn edges digging into his skin like punishment. His hands didn't stop. 30 compressions, 2 breaths, nothing. Michelle returned with a ventilator, but panic shook her grip. She tried to connect the tubing. The machine blinked to life, then failed. A red arrow light pulsed like an accusation. "Daniel, the ventilator isn't responding." He spared it a glance. Critical equipment, useless at the moment it mattered most. "Switch to manual bag," he ordered. "Protocol, standard." "But the backup bag, where's the backup?" His voice had an edge now. The first crack in his armor. Michelle's face drained of color. "I thought it should have been..." They didn't have it ready. A routine night, they thought. A healthy baby with no complications predicted. Someone had skipped the worst case prep. Now, the worst case was here. Marcus roared, his body thrashing against the nurse holding him. "Save him, please God, save him." Chorus cries dropped into animal keening, a sound too ancient for words. Daniel's hands kept moving. 30 compressions. His breaths became the baby's breaths. The child's chest rose under his mouth, then collapsed again when left to its own. No spark of independent life. 20 seconds, 30, 45. Time slid like ice across glass. 2 minutes without oxygen. Brain damage begins at 4. Every second wasn't just a tick of the clock. It was a neuron dying, a memory that would never form, a future unraveling before it even began. The door burst open. Another nurse scrambled in with more equipment, but her panic infected her hands. She dropped the tubing. She couldn't fit the connectors. The room's chaos was spreading, a fever none of them could cool. Daniel's mind raced. Options collapsed one by one. The ventilator failed, backup missing, staff unraveling. Elena's face appeared again, unbidden. Her silence, the way the doctor, calm, competent, methodical, had finally stepped back, shaking his head. "I'm sorry, there's nothing more." "No." Daniel's hands paused, just for a fraction of a second, the kind of pause that felt like eternity to everyone watching. Nurses froze. Parents held their breath. Was he giving up? Was this the proof they'd always suspected, that Daniel Rivera was too cold to care? His eyes closed. His chest rose with a deep inhale. The room thought it was the end, but for Daniel it was a memory and a decision. "Not this time," he whispered. So soft it might have been a prayer. So soft maybe only the baby could hear. Then his eyes snapped open. His hands moved again. Same speed, same pressure but different. Not mechanical, not detached. Every compression landed with a force drawn from somewhere deeper than training, deeper than duty. It came from the grief that had hollowed him 6 years ago, from the love still buried in the worn photograph pressed against his heart. He wasn't following protocol anymore. He was fighting against fate, against memory, against the silence he refused to hear a second time. And in that shift, something electric passed through the room, a gravity that made even the panicked nurses steady, made the parents stop shouting and just watch. For the first time, Daniel Rivera didn't look cold. He looked like a man who would tear the universe apart for one more heartbeat. Daniel's mind cut through the panic like a scalpel through flesh. Precise, purposeful, driven by something deeper than protocol. He had been here before, not in this sterile room with this fluorescent hum, not with this child, but in battlefields where breath and heartbeat were fragile luxuries. Iraq, 2012. Canvas tents pitched on dirt, diesel smoke in the air, where equipment fell to improvisation meant the difference between a body bag and survival. That memory snapped into place now, guiding his hands. Suction bulb now, he barked. Michelle froze. But now, her fingers fumbled as she passed it. She didn't understand. Suction bulbs weren't for this, not for respiratory failure, not for a baby who had stopped breathing. But Daniel remembered. A medic, kneeling over a premature infant born in the middle of chaos, had used this exact method. Too much pressure from machinery would have shredded fragile lungs. Too little, and the baby would never draw breath again. Daniel angled the infant's head further back than the manuals ever taught. Airway wide, chest open. He squeezed the bulb with delicate rhythm, coaxing tiny bursts of pressure, not forcing, but teasing the lungs awake. Behind him, the storm raged. Cora's prayers had devolved into sobs, her hands glowing at the table restraints as she screamed, "Why isn't he crying? Why won't he cry?" Marcus staggered forward, only to be pulled back by two nurses. His fist shook, lips moving in wordless pleas. "Someone call NICU," Michelle whispered, her voice cracking. Daniel didn't look up. Not yet. "Daniel, we're losing him." His tone was still. "Not yet." Because to call meant to surrender. It meant another Elena, another small silent body slipping through his hands while the world declared it finished. He wouldn't let it happen. Not again. His fingers pressed down, one in the sternum, one supporting the back. A modified compression he learned overseas tailored for fragility. The monitor continued its merciless plotline. Someone, he didn't see who, murmured, "Why let him try? He doesn't even care." The words got sharper than the alarm. But Daniel's face didn't flinch. His voice stayed low. Steady for the child alone. "I know you're fighting," he whispered against the infant's ear. "I know you're scared, but you're stronger than fear." 30 compressions, 2 breaths, a suction pull. The room dissolved into suspended silence. Every eye was fixed on the tiny chest that refused to move in its own. Cora screamed his name. "Jacob! Jacob, please!" She had given the baby a name in her panic, clinging to it like a lifeline. Marcus collapsed to his knees at her side, his sobs shaking the floor. Daniel's hand trembled just lightly. Michelle noticed. The room was noticed. Still, he shifted, angling the child differently, remembering something that the medic had muttered in the heat of the dust and blood. Sometimes, the body just needs a reminder of gravity. Sometimes, it needs permission to remember what it was built to do. He adjusted. Another compression cycle. His movements softened, reverent now, as though he held not a patient, but something sacred. "Please," he whispered. His voice almost broke. "Please." The monitor screamed its steady flatline, and then a flicker. One spike, gone as quickly as it came. Daniel froze. The nurses gasped. Michelle leaned forward, hope tearing into her voice. Was that another flicker? Stronger this time. The infant's chest rose, not from Daniel's breath, but from its own lungs. Fragile, struggling, but there. "Come on," Daniel said, louder now. his voice willing the child into life. Come on, fight. A single blessed beep pierced the room. It was weak at first, a hesitant, fragile question mark in sound, but it was there. The infant's chest rose, shallow, stuttering, a fragile gasp of lungs remembering their purpose. Daniel held his breath. Another beep followed, stronger, a tentative acknowledgement that life was insisting itself back into the world. Then another, and then the cry. A piercing, furious, unrelenting wail that turned the delivery room into a cathedral. It filled every corner with triumph and terror intertwined. Life had refused to surrender. The room exploded. Cora's sob became laughter, then prayer, then a tremor of disbelief all at once. Oh God, my baby. Marcus's knees buckled. Two nurses caught him before he hit the floor. Yet, he laughed through tears, shaking with relief so raw it seemed almost painful. His hands trembled over his mouth, but the sound escaping him was pure astonishment. Michelle grabbed Daniel's shoulder, eyes wet. Daniel, you did it! The attending physician arrived, confusion giving way to awe as he took in the scene. But Daniel didn't celebrate. His hands, steady only a heartbeat ago, trembled now. He lifted the infant gently, letting the child's furious cries fill the room. Each breath of the newborn was a defiance against the silence that had nearly claimed him. Daniel walked to Cora, each step deliberate, measured. He placed the infant on her chest. The moment skin met, the crying softened. Tiny fists curled, lungs found rhythm. Life returned to its natural cadence. Your son, Daniel said quietly. Cora looked up, tears streaming, words failing. Thank you, Daniel had already stepped back, retreating to the corner, recording vitals with mechanical precision. Heart rate stabilizing, oxygen saturation climbing, color returning to healthy pink. His face remained unreadable, but his hands wouldn't stop shaking. He pressed them against the counter, willing them still. Deep breath in, deep breath out. The way he trained himself to reset after trauma. The way he'd sealed his emotions away after Elena. Marcus, still and steady, approached. I don't know what you did, but... His voice cracked. You saved him. You saved our son. Daniel nodded once. Just doing my job. No. Marcus shook his head. That wasn't just a job. That was... He struggled for words. That was everything. Daniel's jaw tightened. He wanted to leave, escape somewhere he could breathe without the weight pressing on his chest. But protocol demanded he stay, monitor the infant, complete documentation, see it through. So he did. 20 minutes passed. He recorded every detail, checked and rechecked vitals, spoke only when necessary, only about medical facts. The other nurses watched differently now. Whispers had vanished. Casual dismissal was gone. Even Michelle hesitated before speaking, as if unsure she should break the spell of quiet reverence around him. Finally, she asked, Daniel, that positioning, the suction technique, where did you learn that? Combat nursing, he said simply. I've never seen it in training manual. It's not in manuals. You learn it when you don't have a choice. She paused, then softly. Your hands. They were shaking. He didn't respond. He sealed the last sample and set it aside. We should check another patient's. His hands instinctively went to his breast pocket. Fingers traced the photograph's worn edges through the fabric. A gesture almost imperceptible, but Michelle noticed. Minutes later, after the ward had returned to routine, Daniel stood outside the nursery, watching through the glass. The infant he had saved slept peacefully, swaddled in blue, a name card taped to the bassinet. Baby Martinez, 8 pounds, 4 ounces. Daniel's posture remained rigid. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes were different. They carried the weight of 2 lives now, one lost, one saved. The memory of Elena pressed against the memory of this infant's tiny, determined heartbeat. A nurse passing by paused. "You did well in there, Rivera." He didn't respond. "You know, for someone everyone thinks is cold as ice," she said, smiling. "That was the most human thing I've ever seen." He turned to walk away, but she called after him. "Why do you do it? Why work maternity if it's too hard for you?" Daniel stopped. 3 long seconds passed, heavy with tension. Then, without turning around, because someone has to care enough not to fail, he walked on, leaving the question hanging. Was he speaking of himself or everyone else? Then, a new alarm went off in the ward. A low, insistent beep from the far corner. Another child in need. Daniel's jaw tightened. He stiffened, shoulders squared. A subtle shift. The cold, unreadable nurse ready once more to step into chaos. Only this time, he wasn't the same man who had lost Elena. This time, he had the strength to face it. The photograph in his pocket pressed against his chest. A silent reminder of loss, but also a promise. 1 life lost, 1 life saved, 1 heartbeat reclaimed. The monitor in the adjacent room blared again. Daniel's eyes flicked towards it. A flicker of reflexive anxiety crossed his face, quickly tempered by resolve. He exhaled, squared his shoulder and moved forward. And as he stepped into the next room, the ward seemed to breathe with him, a rhythm restored. Not just the infant's vital signs, but the heartbeat of the man who had found a way to be human through precision, through memory, and through sheer refusal to surrender. For the first time in years, Daniel Rivera allowed himself a silent acknowledgement. He had changed. The cold nurse of legend was gone. In his place stood a man who understood that heroism wasn't about accolades. It was about showing up, every time, no matter what. The life he had lost would never return, but the life he had saved, this small, wailing miracle, was proof that courage and love could coexist in a single pair of hands. And for Daniel, that was enough. The flowers arrived on Thursday. A towering arrangement of yellow roses and baby's breath sat at the nurse's station, accompanied by a card. For Daniel Rivera, the man who gave us everything. Cora, Marcus, and Jacob Johnson. Jacob, the baby finally had a name. Daniel wasn't there to see them. He had taken 2 days off. The first time in 6 years he'd called in without being sick. No explanation, no announcement, just a text to the change nurse. Need personal time. Friday morning he returned. The flowers were still there, prominently displayed. A quiet monument to what had happened. Whispers filled the ward. The cold, distant nurse who had saved a dying infant with nothing but his hands and sheer determination. Daniel walked past without a word. "They've been asking for you," Michelle said, intercepting him. "The parents, they want to thank you properly." "I got their flowers. They want to see you, talk to you." "There's nothing to talk about." They don't see it that way. He was silent, the tension heavy in his chest. Finally, did the baby have any complications? None. He's perfect, healthy, going home this weekend. Daniel nodded and turned. Why do you do that? Michelle pressed. Push everyone away. I don't push anyone away. I just do my job. No, you do more than your job. You save lives and then disappear like you weren't even there. He didn't answer. Later, during his break, Daniel sat alone in the locker room. The photograph rested in his palm. Elena, 3 days old, her tiny hand curled around his finger. The moment between hope and heartbreak, frozen in time. For 6 years, that photograph had been his secret, his wound, the reason he honed himself into perfection. If he couldn't save her, he would make sure no other parent faced the same nightmare. The door opened. Michelle stepped in. She hesitated, then noticed the photograph. Is that... Daniel's hand closed around it. You need something? Just how old? 3 days. The truth hung between them. I'm sorry, Michelle whispered. It was 6 years ago. He said. That doesn't make it hurt less. Daniel's jaw worked. It makes it different. Is that why you're so cold? He supplied. Yes. You're not cold. You're carrying something heavy. He looked down at the photograph. I promised her I'd never let another child die if I could prevent it. That I'd be faster, smarter, better prepared. You can't save everyone. I know, but I can try. Michelle's voice softened. Cora said you whispered something to Jacob when everyone thought it was over. What did you say? Daniel was quiet. Then, I told him I wouldn't let him go. Why? No one said that to Elena. No one promised her she was worth fighting for until the very end. The words cracked something open. 6 years of restraint, of distance, finally giving way. The parents want to name you as a godfather, Michelle said gently, if you're willing. Daniel froze. What? They said he didn't just save our son's life, he gave us our future. They want you in it. I can't. Why not? I'm not good at being close to people. You were close enough to save a child. Is that different? The question lingered. That evening, Daniel stood outside room 347. Cora nursed Jacob. Marcus dozed in the chair beside them. He could have walked away, should have walked away. Instead, he knocked gently. Daniel, please come in, Cora said. He stepped inside, awkward in a way he never was with procedures. We wanted to thank you, Cora began. We've tried, but nothing seems enough. You don't need to thank me. Yes, we do, Marcus said, sitting up. You gave us everything. Daniel looked at Jacob, sleeping, unaware of the life he'd fought for. He's perfect, Cora said, because of you. I just did what I was trained to do. No, Marcus said firmly. Training doesn't explain why you kept going when everyone else was ready to give up. Daniel's hand drifted to his breast pocket. Slowly, he pulled out Elena's photograph. My daughter, he said quietly. She lived 3 days. The room went silent, Jacob breathing softly between them. I work in maternity because every baby I help save is a promise to her. Daniel continued. Her life, however brief, meant something. changed something. Cora's eyes glistened. Then, Jacob's life is her legacy. Marcus smiled, and we meant what we said about Godfather. If you want to, you can be part of his life. Daniel studied the three of them. The family had pulled back from the edge of tragedy. Walls he'd built for 6 years felt less impenetrable. I'd be honored, he said, voice trembling just slightly. 3 weeks later, on the night shift, a young nurse asked, "Is it true that you're the cold one?" Daniel smiled faintly, the first real one in years. They say a lot of things. Is it true? He thought of Elena, of Jacob, of the weight he carried and the lives he'd saved. I care too much to show it. Caring out loud risks breaking, and if I break, I can't save anyone. Later, walking past the nursery, he paused. 3 new infants slept peacefully. Michelle teased, "Still the cold one?" "Cold as ever," he said. But his eyes lingered on the sleeping babies. Somewhere in his pocket, Elena's photograph rested beside a new one. Jacob, eyes wide, staring at the future. On the back, in Cora's handwriting, "To our guardian angel, forever grateful." Daniel Rivera walked the corridor, outwardly efficient, distant, unreadable. Inside, he carried an entire universe, every life saved, every tear, every first breath. They called him cold, but for one baby, 2 parents, and a daughter who lived only 3 days but changed everything. He was warm enough to hold death at bay, and that, he knew, was enough. Everyday heroes are all around us.